All right, wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here. This is an intro course to the three principles. That was that is being part of an effort to bring this understanding to a part of the world where we believe it is very much needed right now. And we had the opportunity to talk to some people that really wanted to be a part of it. And I am very grateful for the response of the three PGC board and the honorary board as well to participate in it, because they truly really are the most amazing teachers in the world. And their generosity in giving their time and their wisdom to a project like this one that will go on to help and inspire thousands of people in different communities all over the world is extremely touching for me. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, everyone, for being here and sharing this very special moment with us. It is up to Mr. Aaron Turner and myself to kick off this event in this very first session. So I am going to do a very brief introduction of Aaron Turner, because most people here don't have a clue of who he is, but he is something. You are in for a treat. Mr. Aaron Turner earned his PhD in anthropology from London's Brunel University and joined Pransky & Associates, a world leader in pioneering approach to human potential. During his decade-long tenure there, Aaron worked as a counselor and consultant, working with individuals, couples, families, leaders, teams, and organizations. In 2010, he moved back to London and founded One Thought to bring an understanding of the three principles to the mainstream through his work with businesses and organizations. Since 2010, Aaron has worked with many businesses, governmental and military organizations, the National Health Service to help individuals and their organizations function better in clearer, deeper states of mind. He also runs introductory and professional practitioner programs, speaks at events and conferences internationally. Aaron is a founding member of the 3PGC. He served as a board president for many years and is now part of the honorary board. But he is also one of the founders and organizers of the annual 3P UK event, which is an amazing event where all the teachers, the best teachers in the world, get together and get to share their wisdom. So if you are anywhere near London later this year, around the end of June, don't miss out on the opportunity to join Aaron there. And my name is Marina Galan. I have been a student of the principles for 14 years now. I live in Mexico, in Querétaro. And I joined the board a few years ago, serving as part of the International Communities Committee and the program committee. And it is my passion to share this work internationally. And I am completely and absolutely committed to share it for as long as I can, to as many people as I can, everywhere in the world I can, as long as they'll listen. Because I have seen for myself the transformational power that it has. And I cannot think of a better way of serving the world and humanity than doing this work. So having said that, this first session, which is the introduction to the introduction, is that right, Aaron?
Yeah, exactly. It's an important job.
Yes, it is an important job. And Aaron and I were having a brief conversation, trying to figure out a way to begin the conversation. And after we hung up, I remembered a video that I once saw of Aaron, where he was being asked, "Can you please explain mind, which is one of the principles?" And he was kind of stunned by the question. And after a few seconds, he said, "I can't, I can't do this." And he started laughing. And it's true. It's always difficult to begin. And I remember once asking George Pransky, who is a great mentor of ours, you will meet later today. Someone asked him, "How do I begin talking about the principles?" And he says, "Oh, don't worry about it. Begin at the middle. It doesn't really matter." So we are going to do our best to do the introduction to the introduction. But one of the things that we think is very important to make clear from the very beginning is that we are going to be presenting to you a whole new way of understanding life, of understanding yourselves, of understanding your mind. And in order to hear something completely new, we usually need to leave our assumptions at the door. We need to let them rest for a while so that we can hear beyond what already makes sense to us. And so this is an invitation for you to leave your assumptions and everything you know or you think you know about how your mind works, how life functions, at the door, and listen in a completely new way. Because who knows, you might hear something new. And if you don't, you can always pick up your assumptions on your way out. You will not have lost anything. And maybe at least you will have spent a beautiful few hours with new friends from around the world. Aaron, what would you say?
Well, what was occurring to me while Marina was speaking is I was imagining someone comes out of the toilet and they have paper trailing from their shoe. You ever seen that? Someone comes out of the toilet and they have paper trailing from their shoe. You want to tell them, you want to tell them there's something that's true that they might want to know about that they don't know about. It's only natural to want to tell them. And you might try to tell them, but they don't want to talk to you because they're trying to go to catch a cab. So they don't want to listen. But if they knew what you were going to tell them, they might want to listen. So that's kind of the discussion today. So when I came across this understanding, there were lots of people that wanted to tell me I had paper on my shoe. I was anxious, I was preoccupied, I was insecure, I was self-conscious. I was fine because I didn't see it. I didn't see the paper. I was just going for the door. But other people saw there was a potential for me. There was something I might want to understand that would make a big difference to me. But because I didn't understand it, it was invisible. It was completely invisible. So many people said to me, Aaron, you should understand this. This would be really good for you. And I had my way of understanding things. And in my way of understanding things, it didn't make sense. So I just didn't get interested for 5 years. When I did get, and what was really funny, when I wasn't interested, it wasn't interesting. So I just thought, oh, it's not interesting. But when I did get interested, it's the most fascinating thing I've ever come across. And I'm still fascinated. And I have discovered so many different helpful truths about life and been able to have a completely different experience of life and a different, I don't know, different possibilities in life. I'm very grateful for two things. Firstly, I came across it. So like you're on this call, you're coming across it. This is you coming across it. But more importantly, that I got interested. Because when I came across it and I wasn't interested, yeah, it made no difference to me. Didn't help me, didn't do anything for me. And that was 5 or 6 years where it was like, oh, don't talk to me about that. It's boring. It's ridiculous. What I didn't realize this discussion that we're having gave me the opportunity to learn things I didn't know, but only if I was curious. I already thought I knew, so I wasn't curious. But when I got curious, I discovered there were lots of things I didn't know that were interesting and really helpful. So, our job today is to start to talk a little bit about, well, what is the direction of the understanding that we want to talk about today? And how do you get curious? Because if there's, I've observed, when I talk to people about this understanding, they want to argue with me. And the reason they want to argue with me is it's the understanding is different from what they already think. Right? But the power of it is because it's different to what they already think. It's something new, and something new can give you something new. Something old cannot give you something new. So if you're listening and you hear something that sounds wrong, that's good. It might be new. And if you hear something that sounds stupid, that's good. It might be new. So the challenge is, and the more ridiculous it sounds, the more helpfully new it might be. Because our existing thinking likes to protect itself. It doesn't like you making new friends. It wants you to stick with your old friends. And so the challenge today is to get a feel for listening to things that don't sound right. How do you keep an open mind when you hear something that's different from what you already think?
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you. I loved that explanation, that invitation to listen differently. Now, another thing that we think is important is to make it absolutely clear what we mean when we say we are talking about principles. We are not talking about methodologies. We are not talking about strategies. We are not talking about models. What we mean by principles is that we are pointing to things that are true for everyone, every single human being, all the time. No exceptions. That is what a principle is. So we could compare it to gravity. Gravity on Earth is true for every human being all the time, 24/7, no exceptions. Well, what we are going to be pointing to is true for every human being, 24/7, no exceptions. And And I know that your mind is going to try to look for exceptions, because that's what mine did when it came across this. And that's the experience I have with every single person that I have tried to share this with. Your mind is going to try to look for exceptions, because, as Aaron was saying, we are trying to desperately hold on to what we know because it gives us a sense of security. So my invitation to you would be, for the next 3 days, just play as if it were true. Give yourself the permission to make an experiment. What if what these people are telling me is true? What would life look like if it were true? And who knows, you might be surprised of what you find out. It is, I can assure you, it is an interesting experience. And if you see something beyond what you already know, your life will change. Because you see, seeing a glimpse of truth is what is transformative. Every single time we see a new glimpse of truth, that transforms our lives completely. And the old world that we used to live in stops making sense. We literally enter a whole new world in which, oh, that's how it works. That's what's happening. That and as we begin to expand in this direction, and the world begins to make sense in new ways, and ourselves, we begin to make sense in new ways, that is how our lives transform. And so it is important to keep in mind that we are pointing to principles, not ideas, not beliefs, not opinions. All that is out. It's at the door right now, at least for the next 3 days. And let's play. Yes. Let's play. So this session is, the title of this session is The Basics of the Three Principles: how our mind works, how our experience is created. And I'm going to be very mean here and hand it over to Aaron so he can begin to explain.
So,
because
yeah.
you've been doing this for so much longer than I have, and so I just want to begin squeezing your wisdom and your knowledge, and then I'll just join in like that paper trail and follow you along.
The first thing I wanted to say is, when Marina says we're talking about a truth, it's not a truth you need to believe. So when Marina says, well, this is true, you're not supposed to agree with it and say, okay, this is true. It's an opportunity to look for yourself, because if you look for yourself and it's true, you'll discover it yourself. So that's the important part. Is what we're talking about is something for you to explore and discover yourself. Okay? Because when you discover it yourself, it will be really valuable because it's real. You know, when I tell people things and they try to believe it, they have a lot of hope. Oh, I tell myself it's true, but that doesn't really help. But when they look for themselves and they're like, wow, like, for example, one of the things that we'll be talking about is the things that we feel come from our thoughts. That's one of the things that we'll be talking about, because we found it to be true. Now, when you have a very strong experience, that feels like it's coming from the outside world. And I say to myself, oh, well, what if that's a thought? It sounds ridiculous. No, this is real. This is happening. That's happening. This is happening. But if I say, well, what if it is a thought? Like, what if I treat it like a thought? Like I just let it go through my mind. And you discover that all of these feelings, all of these experiences, they do go through our mind. Some take longer than others, but they all go through our mind. Everything, every experience we've ever had has come and gone, and it doesn't matter how strong it is. And you start to realize, oh, wow, it doesn't matter how strong it feels. It doesn't matter that it feels like it's tied to my life. It's just happening in my mind. If you discover that, it's powerful, because all of a sudden something can feel very strong and you can still have a new experience because you're willing to let it go. You're willing to have the experience and not hold on to it too tightly. So that's just an example. I thought a nice way of starting to introduce the principles would just be to tell you a bit about my introduction to the principles. And then Marina, you can jump in any time, or, add any time you want. I don't know if you had something on your mind now. No. Okay. So I wanted to share with you that before I listened to this understanding, before I was interested in this understanding, I had an understanding of life that I didn't know I had. And because I didn't know I had it, I didn't know what effect it was having on me. So I typically did very well in school, but not so well outside of school. Because I had a lot on my mind. I did a lot of thinking. I didn't know that, but I can see that now. And a lot of the thinking I did was worrying. So I was not a happy person. I was not a very present person. I wasn't very good with relationships because I was very preoccupied. But I didn't think that was me. I thought that was just life. And I was not bothered by it. I wasn't looking for help. I wasn't looking for anything different. So when the principles came along and people said, hey, Aaron, you should get interested in this. And I said, well, why? And they said, well, you could be happier. And I said, well, I don't care. I don't care if I'm happy. So that's not for me. I wanted to do well. I didn't care how I felt. I wanted to do the best I could. And I had developed my ability to not listen to my feelings. So if you met me, you would think I was very anxious, but I had become numb to that. I didn't know I was anxious. I would say, Aaron, how are you? I'd say, I'm fine. And people who loved me wanted me to feel happy. So they'd say, are you happy? And I would get very confused. Logically, I don't understand that. That doesn't make sense. What are you talking about? I couldn't understand it. Now, all of these symptoms were related to my understanding. I thought my mind was like a camera, that it was showing me the outside world, and the outside world was giving me my experience. So if I had problems, I would feel anxious. If I solved them, I would feel better. That's what I thought. If I was in a relationship and I felt bad, I would blame the other person. And if I didn't feel better, it must still be their fault. And if they carried on doing it, I would shut them out. So I had very short-term relationships, except for my family. So the way I got curious about this understanding was George Pransky, who's also my uncle, asked me to research it. And so I got curious because I was being paid to understand it. And what I learned from studying it was that there was a very simple understanding of the mind. And you'll be hearing about this all weekend, so you don't need to worry about this too much, because you have 3 days to hear more about this. But what stood out to me was they were saying that the mind, there's a deeper nature to the mind, that the mind is powered by the intelligence of life, and that within that power of the intelligence of life is the nature of the spirit. And the nature of the spirit has a deep, rich emotional health, that's already there. And I'd never heard that before. I didn't even know whether I agreed with it, because I'd never heard it before. I thought everybody was different. Some people were anxious, some people were happy, some people were depressed. I thought the idea that everybody at their core is deeply wise and mentally healthy and emotionally rich, I'd never even considered it. It was so new to me that I was fascinated. I was like, that's fascinating. Could that be true? And how could you be 25 years old and never have thought of it? I mean, how could that happen? So I was intrigued almost immediately. I'm like, ooh, that's bold. I mean, even if it's not true, just the idea of it seemed very bold. And it got my attention because I was intellectually curious. So it got my attention. And the next part that stood out to me is, look, you're experiencing that nature of mind through thought, and people's thought is like, it's like clouds. There's nothing solid to it. It's moving around. It's getting deeper and clearer, and it's getting more contaminated and distorted. And that we're experiencing that. That's what our emotions are. They're the experience of our thought. And because our thought is so creative, and it's not solid. Like, it's not like this cup. I could put something in this cup, but you can't put anything in a thought, because it doesn't really exist. It's just in the mind. It's very formless, I guess. That your thought can't hurt you. You experience it based on how seriously you take it. That was new to me. Very new. Wow. So I'm feeling my thought, and even a negative thought can't hurt you because it doesn't really exist. You can only take it too seriously. I thought that was such a bold statement that intrigued me too. So I wasn't personally interested in this. It was just my job, but I found it very intriguing. Now, what I didn't realize is, because it's true, when you get curious about it, you start to see it in your life in real time. Like, I didn't know that. So what happened to me is, I was in a new relationship. I really, really wanted to have a partner. And I would have this pattern where I would meet someone, I would fall in love, I would be thrilled with the relationship. After about 6 to 8 weeks, it would start to sour. It would go up, and then it would go down, and then at about 3 months, someone would get fed up, either me or the other person, and that was the end of it. And every single relationship I had was 3 months. And I saw other people have relationships that were a year or 6 months or 3 years. And so I knew it was possible, but it just didn't seem possible for me. And I didn't know why. And you know why? Because it was happening in terms of the mind, and that was invisible to me. It's like having mold that's behind a cupboard, so that your breathing is bad, but there's nothing you can do because you don't know what's causing it. But if someone said, look behind the cupboard, you could solve it immediately, because it's very simple. It's just invisible. And this understanding made that visible to me. Right. And I just, and it happened naturally, just because I got interested. So I was going to just tell you that story so you could get a feel for it. So typically what would happen in my relationships is, so when I went to do this research and I spoke to my girlfriend on the phone, I could feel that she was pulling away. And she told me, she's like, yeah, I figured, well, we had some fun and kind of that's good now. So I could feel her pulling away. And because I thought my anxiety was caused by problems, not by my mind, when I got worried about her pulling away, I got really anxious and desperate. Now, some of you might be like my girlfriend and feel that that's not attractive. But unfortunately, maybe that's what was wrong. I didn't meet anyone that was attracted to desperate anxiety. But anyway, so I was trying harder I was worrying a lot about the relationship. You know, when you have a problem that you ruminate about and you worry about it, I was doing that. And I was calling her in a desperate state. And every time I called, it would just reinforce why it was a bad relationship, and she would pull away more. So that was my normal pattern that I was doing. However, in the middle of that, I happened to be going on a road trip with my aunt and my uncle and my two cousins. And because we were going on this road trip, I wasn't thinking about my relationship. And because I wasn't thinking about my relationship, I was feeling just fine. So we were sitting in the car, we were chit-chatting, we were all excited about what we're going to do. And for the first time ever, I saw a thought pop into my mind. If you'd caught me at breakfast that morning and said to me, Aaron, did you know that your feelings come from your thoughts? I would have said, don't be so ridiculous. But when I saw it, I knew it was true because I saw it. This thought came into my mind, oh my God, what are you going to do about your relationship? And as soon as the thought came, this wave of anxiety just rolled into my senses and just rolled through my experience. And for the first time ever, I saw myself about to think the thought. I never knew I was thinking my thoughts. So I saw the thought come. I saw the thought bring the feeling. And then I saw myself about to jump into it. Like I had the thought, oh my God, what are you going to do about your relationship? And then I was going to go, oh, let me think about it. Oh, do all the normal thinking. And this little voice, which I now know is kind of what we mean by the intelligence of life, kind of the impersonal intelligence of life. It wasn't me thinking it, but it popped in my mind. It says, I wonder what happens if you don't do that. And I was like, ooh, me too. I wonder. And it was very easy. Once I saw the feeling comes from a thought, I'm about to jump into the thought. It was easy to see what it would mean just to leave it. So I just left it. And it was almost like I just dropped back in the car. The feeling went away, the thought went away, and some really interesting things happened. So in that moment, I discovered that we are feeling our thought, that it only lasts, however strong the feeling, whatever it's related to, it only lasts as long as we feel it. And it's only as relevant as we treat it. And then because I wasn't thinking, I dropped into this space with less thought. And I had an experience of my mind without so much thought. And for the next few weeks, I just felt really at ease and really present and really interested in other people. And I enjoyed hanging out. I could honestly say, after that, I was happy. Not all the time, but I was really happy. And I didn't do anything to have it. I didn't know I was capable. And I enjoyed people. I'd say something really was profound for me. I forgot my relationship had a problem. I literally forgot. I didn't feel it. I didn't think it. It didn't exist in my world at all. So much so that I started sending things into the post to Leela that I thought she would like, just because I thought she would like them. I didn't really think about whether she liked me. Wasn't even relevant anymore. And when I got back to England, I'd forgotten we had a relationship problem. I had a blank slate. I had a free mind. And she called me up. She says, "Oh, you're back. Do you want to get together?" And she's thinking, because I would like to break up with you and get on with my life. And I'm thinking, yeah, that'd be fun. So I went to meet her, planning to just hang out and have a good time, because why wouldn't you? And she came to meet me to kind of break up with me and move on. And she said, you could feel I was different. I was just more available. I was more full of life. And we had a really nice time. Now that was 35 years ago. No, 31 years ago. And most of the time we're happily married. And how happily married we are depends on what kind of thoughts we're listening to about each other. So I through taking an interest in this understanding, I started to see for myself how my experience was coming from my thought, and how my thought created my feeling, and how my feeling came and went based on how invested I was in it, and how deep the experience is behind the thought when your thought's freer, when you have more space in your mind and your thought. And that got me curious in a way that I started to get interested in what's happening in my mind, not what's happening in my life, like what's happening in my mind, and how is that affecting my experience of my life. And I found that it's the most fascinating thing to be interested in, and it's the most freeing thing to be interested in. And I learned different things. I started to learn about the link between my feeling and the kind of thought I had, my feeling and my clarity, my feeling and my intelligence, my feeling and my sanity, and how it's all happening within me, even though it feels like it's happening between me and the outside. And that's a trick of the mind. So anyway, that's my introduction to how I came across it. This understanding went from the stupidest, most irrelevant thing to the most useful, fascinating, and enriching thing, just through taking an interest.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you for your story. That was really fun. So, in a way, the principle that we are pointing to, the truth that we are pointing to, is the fact that even though we believe that something is true, and what I mean is exactly this: even though we believe and we have lived our lives as though we can feel circumstance, human beings are not designed to feel circumstance. We're just not. What we call reality is not something that we can feel. We are only designed to feel our thinking in the moment. Now, my story of how I came upon the principles, I had been a collector of all sorts of things like meditation and yoga, and I had studied compared religions and Sufism and Stoicism, and anyway, it doesn't matter. But I had never heard that. I had never heard, oh no, the thing is that you're just not designed to feel circumstance. So it was like, whoa, what are you talking about? I'm not designed to feel circumstance. And if that was true, then what becomes possible if that is true? And what does not become possible if that is true? Now, here are a couple of things that happen when I began to consider, well, what if this is true? Well, if human beings are not designed to feel reality, but we're only designed to feel our thinking, suddenly a few things started becoming very clear. The first thing was, oh, we are all just looking for a good experience. Like, that's what we're looking for. Everybody in life is just looking to have a good experience. We make up a lot of stuff about what would give us a good experience. We make up that more money would give us a better experience, or a certain partner would give us a good experience, or a certain type of relationship, or a certain number in the bank, or a certain house, or a certain number in the scale, or, we make up what would give us a good experience. But we are all just looking for a good experience. Now, if it was true that we could not feel circumstance, then circumstance could never, ever accomplish the goal of giving us a good experience. So that meant that right then and there, I had to just stop looking for it outside. Turn the page. Okay, that's not an option anymore. So you have to turn your eyes inward and say, okay, so if my experience is only coming from my thinking, then what makes sense, of course, is let me control my thinking and manage my thinking and micromanage my thinking. And then as you begin to try to do that, you realize it's impossible. That's just not an offer. That's just not on the table. Because of the fact that you cannot control your thinking. I mean, does anyone here know what their next thought is going to be? When you ask yourself that question, your mind goes blank and it's like, no. No? Does anyone here know what the last thought of the day will be? Or what you will think at 5:42 this afternoon? Like, you can't. Like Aaron was saying, thought is this moving, changing energy that is just alive and that is going through you. It's not you who are producing the thoughts, who is choosing the thoughts, who is making a thread of possible thoughts that you can have throughout the day. They are just popping up in your head. So it's not about controlling your thoughts, controlling your thinking. Now, Aaron pointed to what is on the table, what is on offer, which is, how do you relate to your thinking? How do you relate to your thoughts? How personally you take them? How seriously you take them? How much weight you put on them? How willing are you to just keep them running over and over and over and over and over and over in your head, instead of just letting them pass, which is their nature? Okay, everything I just said, put it on one side. And now I am going to say another thing that made me go, whoa, 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 hold on a second, that can't be true. But what if we consider that it might be? The other thing that I heard when I came upon this understanding was, wisdom is not something you acquire, accumulate, or develop throughout your life. Wisdom is something you already have. From the moment you are born, it is perfect, inescapable, alive in you, and working 24/7 at your service. And it was like, nah, come on, that can't be true. What do you mean? You know, like I've studied with the monks in the Himalayas, and they have been studying for years to become wise. And I've been, you know, talking to people who have been fasting for days and months and just to gain more wisdom. So what do you mean? Wisdom is already there. It's already available. It's already complete. And then as I started contemplating that possibility, what happened was that the difference between wisdom and acquired knowledge began to become clear. And so, yes, acquired knowledge is very useful in life, and you can do a lot of things with it. But wisdom is something completely different. Wisdom is that inner voice that Aaron was referring to, and that talks to him in such a particularly funny way. You know, like, oh, hold on, what would that look like if you didn't do that? You know, like, that is wisdom, that tiny little voice that taps on your shoulder and says, hey, what if this instead of that? What if that instead of this? And if you start revisiting your life, considering that that is what wisdom is, you will certainly see that it has always, always, always been there. It is just that the relationship you have with it has not always been very intimate, has not always been very alive. And so the possibility of, oh, just like it is how I relate to my thinking, it is about how I relate to this inner voice, to this inner guidance. It's always there, just like the thinking, but it's of a different nature. It's pointing me, it's helping me, it's guiding me. And then as I started to consider, oh, the relationship with my thinking, oh, the relationship with this new idea of wisdom, I started realizing how they related to each other. Because it turned out that my wisdom was letting me know when I was over-engaging with my thinking. My wisdom was letting me know which thoughts were useful and which thoughts were not useful, and I should probably let go of. My wisdom was letting me know when I was using my thinking against myself or others, and when I was using my thinking in my favor and in favor of others. When I was using my thinking to sabotage myself, to blame myself, to shame myself or others or life. And when I was using it to find opportunity, when I was using it to expand possibility, when I was using it to bring curiosity to the table instead of judgment, and listen to another, and really try to understand them instead of arguing with them, which takes us back to how we can be listening to this session. And so slowly considering this completely different approaches to life began to uncover a completely different new reality for me that was now possible, that had always been available. I just hadn't seen it because I didn't know that it worked that way. And now, considering that it might work that way, everything began to change in my life. And I mean everything. My relationships, the way I exercised my maternity. Because before, I used to think that I needed to bring my children the necessary lessons that will give them the tools that they needed in life. And then one day I had to come to the humiliating conclusion that I didn't have a clue of what the challenges that they were going to face in life were. So there was no way I could prepare them for it. You know, and a very simple example is like peace was a very high value to me. And so I tried to, teach them about peace and all those things. And then one day the thought occurred to me, we were at a dinner party and someone said, no, our kids will be fighting the Third World War over water. And I thought, oh my God, and I am making them pacifists. I am condemning them to, not survive the Third World War. Like, what's that about? And one of my children, he used to lose everything. He lost sweaters and books and caps and everything. Like one day he came home from school without a shoe. I never understood how you could lose a shoe, but okay. And I had tried everything with him. I had tried teaching him the importance of responsibility. And I had tried shaming him. And I had tried telling him off. And then one night, in the middle of the night, I couldn't sleep. I was just tossing and turning. And the thought occurred to me, how do you know that your child is not going to go through horrible loss in his life? And you are teaching him to feel responsible for it and to suffer it more than necessary. And so those realizations were like, oh, I need to stop doing this. I just need to stop, because the truth is that I don't know what they will need. So that helped me see, oh, I am not the bringer of lessons. Life will bring whatever lessons they need to learn in their path. So my job as a parent became incredibly simple, which was, I just need to love them through the lessons. I just need to be a companion to them through whatever challenge they go through. Support them. And so my exercise of parenting went from, I have to give them every possible tool and micromanage everything they do and make sure that they learn everything they can, to, I just need to teach them that they have this wisdom inside them that can guide them through any challenge they will ever have. I just have to teach them that, and that will be enough. And that blew my mind. How simple life became suddenly, like parenting, which to me was the most difficult job in the world and was a heavy weight on my shoulders. And I wanted to be the perfect mother and father and everything at the same time, suddenly became, oh, no, hold on. They have everything they need. I just need to point it out to them and make sure they don't forget. Now, there is one more thing that was very mind-blowing to me. Another, whoa, hold on a moment. Which was, and you pointed to this as well, Aaron, so thank you for that. Problems don't really exist. you see, every problem already has a solution. So they don't really exist. It's just that you're not seeing the solution. You're seeing the problem. So think of it as when you were in high school and the math teacher was, writing down a problem on the board, and you were looking at the problem and saying, what? I'm trying to figure it out. And then suddenly there's this moment of, oh, and you see the solution. And it's like, that makes sense. So the problem never existed. It's just that you were not seeing the solution. And the way Aaron referred to it is, oh, when I get my mind to quieten down and I stop making it noisy and I stop, my level of consciousness rises, and suddenly the problem doesn't look like a problem anymore. And I can even forget that there was even a problem, because it was never actually there. It was just not real to me anymore. It was not in my radar. It was not part of my reality. And so that changed life completely in a way of, oh, well, I never have a problem. If I have a problem, it's just that I have a disagreement with reality, and I just need to raise my level of consciousness to an agreement with reality so that I can see the solution. And so that became another way in which, oh, whenever the feeling that I am having is constricted and uncomfortable, that is the way wisdom is telling me, you just holding on to your thinking way too tightly, and you have to let go a little bit of it so that the system can, bring you back to a higher state of consciousness, and then life will look completely different. And then I heard someone say, well, this perfect peace, this space of well-being and contentment and enjoyment and quiet is your natural state, which was completely different to everything I had ever heard before. Like that used to be the goal, right? Not the starting point. And so someone said, no, this is your natural state. Now you can think yourself out of it. And it was like, oh, so it's the other way around. There is no goal. This is just the natural state. And I mess it up with my thinking. And all I have to do to come back is renounce my thinking. Give up the thinking that is taking me out of that natural state. Because the second part of that sentence was, you can think yourself out of it, but you cannot think yourself back. And I was like, hold on a second. So I can use my thinking to get myself out of peace and well-being, but I cannot use my thinking to come back. And so I started playing with that. And what I realized is, well, no, you cannot use your thinking to come back, because that is the starting point. And however you use your thinking will only get you away from there or keep you there. So if you're using your thinking to get yourself away from there, and you learn to give up that thinking, renounce that thinking, the system will bring you back. There is nothing you need to do. And that was a big relief, because If it were up to me to bring myself back, I think I would be in a lot of trouble. I would not know how to begin doing that. But thank God, the system, which is, like Aaron said, the intelligence of life, the intelligence that is guiding all of life, every manifestation of life in the universe, is the one that is guiding me in this adventure. So the intelligence that is guiding roots towards humidity, the intelligence that is guiding leaves in different kinds of trees to grow the perfect way so that they can receive the most sunlight. The intelligence that makes sure that the rooster doesn't get his mating dance confused with another bird's mating dance, and that the intelligence that is in charge of all of that is in charge of me. And the language it speaks is feeling. So it speaks to me through my feelings. And through my feelings, it is lovingly, patiently, kindly trying to help me understand how to navigate my mental life, how to use my thinking, how to learn the consequences of thought, how to access all my mental, emotional, spiritual resources at any given moment and not compromise them because it is unnecessary to. Now, I would like to leave an invitation on the table. If you consider everything we just shared and then compare it to your acquired knowledge, which is only ever your acquired knowledge, and it is tiny, it might become very evident that your acquired knowledge has gotten you here, where you are. It has given you the results that it has given you thus far. But if you want to go beyond that, if you want a new possibility, if you want a different reality, you have to go beyond what you know. And you have to enter the realm of the unknown and listen for the guidance of the intelligence of life. I remember I was 14 years old and I was going through a lot. And someone suggested that I go see a priest. And I was having a conversation with a priest. And what he was telling me was, you can just leave it all in God's hands. And I remember telling him, show me where his hands are and I will. Just show me where his hands are and I will leave them there because I can't see them. And so that made me responsible for all my problems and made me responsible to figure things out and solve them and push through. And you see, and as I began to consider the possibility of the truth of what this understanding was offering, suddenly the hands of God became visible. The hands of God became visible in this guidance, in this wisdom that was letting me know all the time, 24/7. Oh, it's just your thinking. You're taking it too personal. You're holding too much to that idea. Maybe if you renounce that, things would look different. And I would like to close the statement with this. You know, a lot of people, when we begin to explore this understanding, they will tell you, well, it's just your thinking. And yes, it is just your thinking. But oh my God, it's like saying, well, it's just nuclear power, you know. No, your thinking is the most powerful thing in the world. It is what creates your experience. It is what brings the possibility of experience. I had an experience a few nights ago. I am going to use this just to illustrate the unbelievable power of our thinking, okay? I was asleep and I was having a dream. And in this dream, my mother wanted to remodel an apartment for her. And it was a beautiful big place with floor to ceiling windows, you know, it was huge, but she wanted it done very specifically. And she wanted this many rooms, and every room had to face windows, and I couldn't find a design that would accomplish what she was asking, no matter how hard I tried. You know, I would put a wall here, and so anyway, it just didn't work. And every time I would turn to her, and her face was growing more and more disappointed, and more frustrated, and more angry every time I failed. And so every time I was feeling more and more scared and more anguished and more. And so the anxiety became so bad during the dream that I woke up. So it had become a full-blown nightmare, right? So I wake up and I immediately feel the relief of, oh, that was just a dream. But then the next thought that comes into my mind is, but wait, how is your relationship with your mother right now? Are you in good terms with her? Or are you in bad terms with her? And so for 2 seconds, I panicked trying to remember what my relationship is with my mother right now. Panic. And then after 2 seconds, I remembered my mother died a few months ago. And so I felt an enormous feeling of relief, like, oh, I don't need to worry about how my relationship is with her anymore. But then the next second brought huge grief and an enormous sense of loss and emptiness. So in less than 10 seconds, I went from extreme anguish to relief, to panic, to relief, to grief. And I was left shocked by how fast it had happened and how powerful it had been and how extreme the experience had been. So much so that I couldn't shake it off. You know, I spent the whole morning thinking about it. I'm like, wow, like this is unbelievable. You know, and all the time I was just snuggled up in bed. But it just goes to show you, it's just your thinking, yeah, but it's just your thinking. I mean, the possibilities of that. It's just your thinking. And you have a system which is in charge of the whole universe, an intelligence system, an intelligence that is in charge of the universe, that is kindly and lovingly trying to teach you how to use it. And that is the consideration that we are bringing to the table for you. What if this is true? What would your life look like if this were true? How would it transform if you begin to act as if it were true? And that is what we want to play with you for the next 3 days. That is the game. That is the invitation. That's my follow-up to you, Aaron.
Very cool. Very cool.
We have about 5 minutes before we go into a Q&A. So if you have some words of wisdom to close.
Me?
Yeah, you.
Well, the only thing that occurred to me, because I was engrossed in what you were saying, is sometimes when I'm talking to people about this, they're wondering, well, what would this look like for me? What would my experience of my experience look like? What would my life look like if I had more understanding? Okay. Or they're thinking, well, this is all very well if your life is like that, but if your life is like this, then I don't really think this is relevant. Well, we want you to consider that we want you to consider that as a listening issue. It's like, what if it is? Like, what if it is relevant to you? Not because we say it is, but because you have the ability to consider it and discover that it is. So we're asking you to consider that it could be really relevant to you and it could be really fascinating and helpful to you, but you have to keep the door open. Like, you have to say, well, listening to these guys, it sounds like it's only relevant to this point, but if this is true, then there's no way. We're asking you to consider, well, what if that's not true? To keep the door open, because if you keep the door open, just like in what Marina was saying and what I was saying, you'll discover how it's relevant for you, and then you'll discover what difference it makes to you. We couldn't possibly know that. We just know that if you stay curious, you discover, and those discoveries make a difference. That's what we've been sharing with you. It's like, as soon as you take an interest and you're willing to consider it and you're willing to follow that consideration, you'll make discoveries that will make a surprising difference to you. So when I talk to people, they come back, guess what? And I'm not like, oh yeah, I already know. I'm like, what? And they said, this happens and that, and it used to be like that, and now it's like this, and I thought this was real, but that was just a thought. And I'm fascinated to hear it because I couldn't have possibly predicted it. And actually, if you feel like you're facing something that we haven't talked about it, we would love to see what happens when you bring an understanding to that situation, because it will show us something that we hadn't previously appreciated about the power of the mind in any circumstance and the power of understanding the mind given any circumstance. So it just occurred to me that, that often happens. We've all had different experiences, but if these are principles, behind our experience of all those different circumstances lie the same principles. And so I just wanted to share that so that if you're having that thought, I completely understand it. And see what happens if you keep an open mind, and you might discover something that's specific to you in your circumstance. And that's kind of the power of it.
Incredibly important point, Aaron. I remember having a conversation with my dad a few years before he died, and he sat down and he told me, so explain to me, what is this that you do? And I was shocked because he had never ever been interested in what I do, but I was like, really, you want to listen? Let me tell you. So I started telling him, and he started arguing with me, like crazy. And then it occurred to me to ask him, Dad, is there anything that you want to change in your life? He was like, no, of course not. Why would I want to change anything in my life? And I was like, oh, right. And then I told him a lie. I told him, well, this only works for people that want to change something in their lives. and I am going to be very, very clear about why that is a lie. Most people come here looking for something, like because there is suffering in their lives, or they want to look for a better option, or they are looking for solutions. But during the time that I have been teaching these, I have met so many people that were truly, really, truly incredibly happy. And they did not know that their life could get better. They didn't. And then as they started playing with this, a whole new world of possibilities opened up to them. And they were like, oh, wow, I didn't know it could get better. And again, to Aaron's point, we don't know what might become possible for each of you. We can't know, because as much as it is universal, it guides you individually, it guides you personally, and it guides you to the best version of yourself, to the best possibility of yourself, to the best possibility of your life. And if you are just willing to trust it, even for a little while, even for just these 3 days, who knows what can happen. So welcome. Welcome, and thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for trusting us enough to be here, to show up, to listen to something new. Should we open it up for questions and comments, Aaron?
Oh, I would love that. I would love to know what's on people's minds, what they've heard, what they've thought, what they're curious about.
Okay, so because the interpreters are in different rooms and they cannot translate back to us, maybe you can type your questions in the chat, and then either Masha or Olena will translate them for us, either in the chat as well, or they will find a way to do it. Does that sound like a plan, Aaron? Masha, Olena? Yes? Perfect. Now, if you are fluent in English, just open your microphone, ask the question, and Masha and Olena will translate it. Would you please speak to the connection between thoughts and feelings? Are all negative feelings from personality thinking, and positive thoughts are from divine thought? Go.
Oh, this is a really easy one. I mean, what we're considering is that feelings are the experience of thought. So we're considering that our feelings are just the way our thoughts feel, right? And now this might sound complicated, so I'm going to let Marina help me if it does. All of our thoughts are, I don't know, pure energy, the pure intelligence of life. Well, with a little flavoring, you know? So if you eat a banana, it's kind of sweet, but if you sprinkle chili powder on it, it's hot too. Right? So if someone says, "Do you like banana?" and you don't know yours had chili powder on, you might say, "No, too spicy." Right? So the thing about thought is it varies in its purity. And that's why our feelings vary. If all thought was pure thought, we'd just be in a deep, loving contentment all the time. But because thought varies in its purity, this is the way I think about it, our feelings vary, right? Because we're feeling the relative purity of our thought. And just like with banana, the nature of the mind is sweet and supportive, but you can add sour to your thought. You can add anxiety. You can add insecurity. You can add desire. And the thing is that I think there are contaminated positive thoughts. Like, I don't feel content when I'm excited. Like, I might like excitement, but I don't feel a deeper experience when I'm excited. I mean, it is a positive. Is it though? I don't know. Maybe you could say it's a positive feeling, but it's not a pure experience of mind. And in my mind, there are very touching, deep experiences of the nature of life and of loss and of, the deeper aspects of life and death. So to me, yes, our feelings are an experience of thought. Just like you can smell something, the thing doesn't create the smell is the thing. Like, why is this chicken creating the smell of mold? Oh no, it's not, it's moldy, you're just smelling it. So that's kind of that's my perspective.
Yeah, well, what I would say about it is the question is making a differentiation between divine thought and personal thought, personal thinking. So to me, this points to the fact that as a principle, divine thought is just energy moving through us, presenting a possibility. And our personal thinking has to do with how we relate to the thoughts that appear, to the thoughts that show up. Our conditioning is how we are relating to in any given moment to it. And then feelings are vital, important information that point us to how we are relating to thought. Feelings are a real-time feedback system that teaches us, if we know how to use it, if we understand how it works, that teaches us the consequences of how we relate to thought. So as Sydney Banks, the source of this understanding, the first person that spoke about this understanding, says, you can have very low quality thinking, like, I want to hurt this person, but if you don't act upon it, you're good. you're good. You are not relating to that thought on a personal level. You are not making it true for you. So let me ask you something. How many of you think on an everyday basis, I'm so stupid? Like I do, at least 5 or 6 times. Yes. And then how many times a week or a day do you think, I aced that? Yes, I rule. Well, also a couple of times a day. Which one is true? Neither. Sometimes I think I am horrible and ugly, and sometimes I think I look great. I'm such a catch. Which one is true? Neither. It's just thinking and how I am relating to it in the moment. But the way it feels is teaching me, oh, which one is the one that I want to choose? Which one is the experience I want to have? Which one will help me in life, in my relationship with myself, in my relationship to others, and which one will create separation or the illusion of separation and will create an unpleasant experience.
Hey, Marina, there's a question in the chat. Did you see it?
I am seeing it, yes.
Okay. Shall I read it out?
Please.
If it is complete chaos in my head, how can I stop it?
That was my question for a few years.
Oh, great, great. Well, what helped you with that?
Well, there were a couple of things that helped me with that. The first one was as I started realizing that if I could see thought, it meant that I was not thought, I was not involved with it. I was being a witness of it. I could let it happen on its own, like on the back burner, but I was not engaged with it. I was not being part of the chaos. So if you can see the chaos, you are not in it. And you can rest in that space of pure consciousness that is aware of the chaos. You don't need to do anything about the chaos. You can just rest in the awareness of it and begin to realize that awareness, that consciousness is your true nature, not the chaos. And that for me kind of helps the chaos quiet down, because I'm not engaging with it, I'm not believing it, I am not fighting it either. I am not rejecting it. So I am not interacting with it. I am not engaging. That is one thing. And the other one was realizing that, well, yeah, chaos happens sometimes because we're human. And like I was saying, you can create the chaos, but you cannot uncreate it. You just need to give it up. You just need to give it up. You need to renounce it. What would you say, Aaron? What's your experience with that?
Well, I really like the way you answered it. So I would give a sense of this. I was going to fold in the other question as well. Like somebody said, how many years did it take to get in a good state? So I was going to say, kind of speak to both of those. In terms of the chaos, one of the things that I have seen for myself is when I want to get rid of a certain feeling, it hangs around. It's very frustrating. And I came to understand that that's because if I'm trying to get rid of it, I'm reacting to it like it matters, and I'm putting my attention towards it. And that's how thought works. It's like whatever we put to it attention towards, it's like we're putting energy into it, and it can live for longer. And I noticed that the upsetting thoughts I have that don't bother me don't hang around. And I think that's true for everybody. So it's a really difficult thing to say, but I always ask myself, well, like if I'm trying to get rid of a feeling, like let's say it feels like chaos and I'm trying to get rid of it, I'll stop and say, well, why do I care? Because I have lots of uncomfortable, unpleasant thoughts that I don't care about. And it's usually because I'm treating it like it matters in some way, that I'm making it more meaningful than just having a thought. And I think what Marina was pointing to is looking in the direction of realizing, what if it's okay to feel chaos? What if it's just thought? It's certain thoughts running through our awareness. And what if that's all right? Because that gives us the chance to have a different feeling, a different experience of the same experience. And one of the things we're pointing to is that's possible. Right. So for me, I was anxiety phobic, and that meant I couldn't get rid of anxiety. But then I realized, well, what if it's a thought like every other thought, and it's just me that made it special? And then all of a sudden, it starts behaving like a normal thought rather than a super thought. So it's that we're starting to appreciate our relationship to our thought and how that feeds into our experience and the way it behaves. Now, the thing I wanted to add is, don't feel like this has to get answered now. What we're saying to you is there's an answer for that in this conversation. And if this answer didn't do it for you, there's more than 2 more days of conversation. So don't worry about it. But just to say there is an answer in this direction, you'll get a feel for it. Don't worry. And I wanted to add to the person who asked, how many years did it take to be in a good state? Okay. There's a couple of things I wanted to say. Firstly, you've already done it. That I haven't met anyone who hasn't had a very deep, good, meaningful state in their life. Because everybody loses concentration sometime, right? So that's the first thing to say. The second thing to say is, in the stories that Marina and I have told, you'll notice that there were moments where we caught sight of something we hadn't appreciated before, and things got easier. That happens in an instant, right? So, I had things like that happen this month and also several years ago. And also, so you don't, it's not, we're not talking about something that's going to take you a long time. We're talking about something that's already happening. And as you start to appreciate how it's happening, it's less confusing and it's simpler, and then it looks easier. Right? And the reason I say that is because I don't want you guys thinking about it like it's going to be difficult and it's something you're going to have to work at. It's just something you want to be curious about. It's something that's already happening. It's not something that's, you're not getting a new mind. You're just appreciating more about the mind. You're not getting, new thoughts. You're just having more perspective on the fact that we experience thoughts. So that's what I wanted to add on that.
And also, Aaron, we are trying to point to how the mind works, not what you should be doing with it or anyone should be doing with it. And like you were saying, there are so many feelings that we categorize as negative, and then we try to avoid and we try to get rid of, and yet every feeling is sacred information that is valuable in teaching us. And what I have found is that when I get curious about the feelings that I used to consider negative, like loneliness or hopelessness, when I get curious about those feelings and I change my judgment of them, I can listen to them differently. And I can obtain information from them that I would not be able to get if I were judging them and trying to get rid of them and trying to manage them. And so, in a way, that famous quote by Sid, if people stopped fearing their experience, well, what if we stopped fearing chaos? What if we stopped fearing anxiety? What if we stopped fearing loneliness? What if we stopped fearing all these things? That would change our entire relationship with experience, which means that we would learn to use it in a different way. Like before finding the principles, I went to 10 or 15 different emotional intelligence courses, and they told me it was very important that you would identify your feeling and your emotion and you would name it and you would express it and you would, but they never ever taught me that it was something that you could use. How do you use your feelings? Well, they have a purpose. They have the purpose to help you learn how to navigate your thinking, how to use your power of thought. So use them. Use your feelings. They are sacred information about your thinking, not about the world. About what you're doing with your thinking now, not about who you are. And that makes all the difference. And how many years does it take to explore this understanding to manage to be in a good state? I will say this again. You are already in a good state. That is your nature. That is the starting point. You're just thinking yourself out of it. So there's no need to wait. Like wisdom is here now. It's just veiled by your thinking. And there are a couple more questions in the chat, but we have come to the moment of our break, Aaron, and I would really want to be respectful for that. But I would ask Kate to please keep the questions for us, and we'll try to answer them later somewhere in a chat or maybe in wherever we put the videos up or etc. Yes, Aaron?
I agree completely.
Well, Aaron, thank you so much for sharing this first session with me.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure to be here with everybody. Thank you for coming. And it's been wonderful to do it with you, Marina. I've really enjoyed listening to you. So it's been fabulous. Thank you all.
Me too. Me too. Okay, well, let's have a 20-minute break and we will see you then at 10 after the hour back in the room for a delightful second session with George and Linda Pransky. And another adventure. We'll see where that takes us. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.